to the Unfinished Cubby Podcast about work-life balance. I'm talking with Dan. What's your surname?
Ferreira.
Yeah. Who is a designer and a gypsy.
Yeah. I kind of call myself a designer of habitats.
Nice. Okay.
Because I think that kind of grabs the kind of human habitat element in terms of like, I love house design and interior design and thinking about the houses that we build in the ways that like affords a particular type of living. But then I also love gardening, and in a sense I think that's habitat design as well, because like we're designing homes for plants and like little grubs in the ground, and so like I want to make their homes really beautiful too.
Nice. Yeah. And we're recording from, and I'm trying to think of a pronoun to do this justice, because ergonomic doesn't capture the beauty at all, but
cozy
and much more. Just an absolutely beautiful little tiny home that I'm going to ask some questions. We don't need to stick with them. But apart from the kind of, I love the darkness and the old quality of the wood that you've got in here. It brings to mind for me like an old study, and then like the big desk that is the centerpiece of the study, which is something that's close to my heart to have, and this has that kind of a feel to it.
This design must really resonate with you then, because like that's totally my vibe as well.
Right.
I just love that old dark wood antique sort of feel. You know, I want to sit here at my desk in the morning and feel like I'm at my study, and I just white things poke out to me very brightly.
Absolutely. And it's just so organized and clear, and there's so much space in here, and the like I love that you gave me the tour yesterday. The everything just hooks in. There's everything's ready to go to drive. So just the practical aspects that and the merging of that with beauty. What's the word for that in design? It's got to be a better word.
Functionality. Well, design's always a balance between function and aesthetic. That's and so it's sort of like, if you can get both, that's the idea.
Well, that's what stands out to me about this place is I feel like they work together and both are greater for it. Like it's so practical, but it's also so beautiful. Like I'm just looking at like the row of hooks down here that hold those drawers in. That's obviously a practical thing to stop them going, but it's also so beautiful. It looks so much better than...
They do look nice, don't they?
Yeah.
That was a really tough solution to come up with, and in fact I lived on the road for a few months without any hooks on anything because I was insisting on waiting for a good solution.
All right.
But it meant that every time I like took off or down the road, I had these like boards, and I would literally screw the like you can see the old screw holes where I would screw the boards in like this, and it would hold all the drawers in place.
Okay, cool. So it's evolved.
Oh, hugely.
Okay. Yeah.
I think the word insist is like one that says a lot about the way that this truck's evolved in terms of like I just haven't settled for anything. If something doesn't feel right, I'm not going to use it, I'm not going to do it. And so it's just everything like and look, it's still like that today. Like there's still elements of this that I feel like are slightly incongruent, and sometimes and it's gotten to the point where it's stuff like the cutlery,
Yeah.
So,
cool.
and I'm aware of that, so it's just constantly like, it's like filtering and finding those pieces.
Wow, I really, really like that. I won't go into my story, but that's a big part of why I'm at the village myself right now, actually. So we're at EVA, Eco Villages Australia in Maleny, and you're leaving today. You've been here for about a week. I also want to mention too the beautiful chicken coop that you made for the chicken that has just shown up here we're not sure where it came from,
Yeah.
and made itself very at home and started pooing all through the kitchen.
She slept in there last night.
Oh yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
cool.
was so well. I mean, I put her in there
Yeah,
just to get her acquainted, but she also sat on the little perch that I built.
Yeah,
I was
nice.
just like,
Yeah.
chicken builder's dream.
Yeah. But it's I was going to say Taj Mahal, but for chickens, but it's not. It's a tiny, beautiful home. But you coming here and doing that, it brings to mind like a journeyman carpenter. Are you familiar with the?
Yeah, I've heard the word a few times. I think I conjure that image up for a few people because
Yeah.
it keeps coming up.
Yeah. So it's they and it's still a thing when people learn carpentry. I guess it's a European thing. So a fellow I met that was German, and basically you learn your trade in carpentry, and then you just go and travel about and stay in people's homes and build, practice your thing for years, and do that, and then become a master in the thing. And it's a beautiful image for me. Well, it's a real thing. It's not just an image, but
that's really cool.
Yeah.
I resonate with that, and I think I'm in the process of building. Like I'm changing some of the storage areas in the truck to suit that kind of lifestyle. Like I've just cleared out, I gave my fridge away because I didn't use it, and so now I've got this big space to have like a rack for all my gardening tools and for my seeds. So like I want to be able to show up at people's houses, do some gardening, sow some seeds, seed bomb the place, and then leave, and in a few weeks they've got veggies popping up. Thanks, Dan. And then I've also got another drawer here that's going to be my tool shed basically. Cool. So that's going to be like my drills and screwdrivers, all different fixings, and like I think that's because I want to keep practicing when I'm on the road. It's not like I kind of have a bit of an itch to build things, so it was actually really satisfying yesterday to get out there and just pull all my tools out and get stuck into it. So it's nice to be able to bring that with me. I just need my drills.
Nice. And you already have them, but you'll give them more prominence and place, and
they'll have like a nice slot, and
for sure.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about there's a map in the corner of the home here of the east coast of Australia, and it's full of pins, and I believe each one represents a different intentional community. Is that what you're?
Yeah. So the pins on the map, there's green pins and there's red pins, and the red pins are places that I haven't been before and that I don't really have a connection to, but that I've maybe heard about, and it has just piqued my interest basically. And the green pins are the places where I've been. I know people there. I have a phone number or an email perhaps, and I know that I can reach out and say, hey, I'm on my way through, can I stop in for lunch? Or, some of those places, I'd feel comfortable stopping in for weeks or months at a time. So, and I think that, that's basically the whole reason that I built this truck, is for that map, because the truck was a way that I was going to be able to connect together this network of people throughout Australia that are doing work that I admire, and that's really what I was wanting to do.
That's awesome. This is just a administrative matter. You need to meet Jimmy. Your vision is so aligned with what he's doing with Polka Dot.
Cool. Yeah, Polka Dot. I mean, it's in the name, right? Like all the little connect the dots.
Cool.
Sort of thing,
Yeah. It didn't. That's great that you resonate with the name straight away. Yeah.
You didn't like it?
No. But I'm not gonna. But yeah. No. But that's exactly what it means too.
Cool.
Yeah. So, can you tell me about some different communities, what they're like and what your experience is? I'm going to just mention this place here, which is really unusual. In the middle of the lovely sleepy little town of Maleny, bordering on the showgrounds. We've got 3 acres of wild kind of wilderness. And Andrew and Claire have, I won't go into the full history of I'll mention Peter Erdman was a fellow who for years...
It goes back to 1864.
Exactly. But no, there's a fellow who sort of went through the process of getting the council approval and had this vision. I met him when I first came to town a decade ago, and he passed recently and didn't seem to be able to kind of get it fully off the ground. And then Claire and Andrew have bought that from him a year and a half ago and just done an enormous amount. It's not a village yet as such. There's not enough people living here, but it's beautiful to me the way they're living, which is with a focus on living sustainably, in the sense that sustainably means so indefinitely you can kind of live in this way without taking from the earth, and in all senses too. I pay to have my couple of rooms here for me and the girls when we stay here, and the amount that they've asked me to pay is what's an amount that's going to be very sustainable for you. And anyway, it's an interesting place, and I would go into it further. But
and I just want to add to that the I think one of the core features of this is the ownership model, in that the property is held in common by members of the organisation Eco Villages Australia, and that, I suppose the intention behind that was to bring the ownership model as close to, in legal terms, almost unownership, and perhaps the way that First Nations people would interact with the land, in that it's a little bit less about human ownership and more about sharing and taking responsibility and caring for the space.
You're absolutely right.
So I think that's what really piqued my interest about this place, was the approach to ownership, which is something that I'm fascinated by. Is how to set up how to interact with the land that's conducive to people taking accountability and responsibility, not in a burdensome way, but in a really beautiful, lively way.
Yeah, for sure.
And I suppose that leads into the communities that I've been visiting, in that the ones that I've found have been the most beautiful, I guess, are the ones that where it feels like, how do I say, I feel just as welcome as the person that owns the place. And that was something that really kind of popped a bubble for me when I was starting to live at the property where I've been spending a bit of time recently, down at Rosclan. Is Rick, the fellow who owns the place, would say to me, "You own this place just as much as I do." And he had to say it a few times. And I just really let that sink in, and after a while I really started believing him.
I'm really, really interested to understand what makes that true for you. We've actually here had a lot of conversations about that, and I've been saying, you say that you've got this community model, but the reality is still you're the owners of this organisation, and so but that could very much be my own stuff around that, but I'm interested, what makes that true?
I think the trust in the relationship, and there's a sense that I get talking to him that when he says that it's coming from a place he's not trying to conjure up something in my mind. He's just saying it as it is in his mind. And that's a really powerful thing. At the end of the day, we're humans, we're squishy emotional creatures, and it doesn't matter what combination of words you put on paper, it doesn't matter what legal structure, that's not the thing that's going to change how we interact with the land.
Would it be, it's true for him, he's the resident custodian, and it's true for him that it's not his, and that you're welcome there, and that makes it true for you, do you think?
I think it's also true for the land. Like,
Okay.
I think it's so. As I spend more and more time there, I've reached a point where I feel like my connection, my connection is with the land, and the land is the one that's telling me and communicating with me about what my work there is, about how welcome or how not welcome I am, about whether I should be there or whether I should go.
Okay. Yeah,
And
cool.
so that, like, really, it's not so much a matter of me needing to be convinced of any ownership model, and more just humans stepping out of the way to open the path to to honest and genuine communication with nature, which is something that I've been like really looking for before I, left off in my sort of truck journey. That was really what I was seeking, was connection with nature, and I suppose a sense of oneness, like seeing my sameness in the universe. But that's a whole nother
No, that's great.
that's a whole nother rabbit hole.
I'm curious, while we're on here, what do you think of the notion that we have a place, or maybe places on the planet where, like, individually or as part of a group, like, we are connected to that part of...
Yeah. If that's something that occurs naturally through experience, then that sounds beautiful. If it's something that we feel like we need to, how do I say, like, create, then I think it's a little bit backwards.
Yeah, it needs to come from the earth, from the place, not from the humans.
Yeah. And so, and I mean, what you're saying is like kind of what I'm doing, in the sense that, like, I feel like I'm connecting people and places together, and broadening, a network of relationships and friendships that are valuable and important to me. And that's the core of it. And I think I'm realizing as time goes on just how I want to say, like, once again, squishy and emotional this, like, experience is, because it's easy to see it from a really practical standpoint, in terms of what are the things that we need to do to mitigate climate change, or what are the things that we need to do to avoid social isolation, or all of these problems of the day. But I think it's actually that thinking leads us to kind of black and white, quite practical steps that we need to take when the intuition for the path that we want to take is right there inside us, if we give ourselves the space to listen to it.
Yeah.
So I think that's another, like, really important element, is like the creation of space in life, and the holding of intentions simultaneously creates outcomes that you could have never foreseen, but then that somehow find a way to meet your needs and to move you in positive and healthy directions.
Beautiful. Yeah, that ties into where we started talking about the creative process. And I have a very busy, active mind, and tend very easily to operate from there, which can be so debilitating, and the kind of the solutions and things that come out of there are so different to a creative process where there's something really new and amazing. And I sort of, there's a couple of places, like, if I try and come from sort of my center, from my body, like, this is my place that drives me rather than my mind, I tend to find clear answer, like immediately, like if I ask here, I can do it. Whereas if I sit here and try and think of what the right sensible thing is, there's an infinite number of considerations that I can include in that calculation.
Totally.
Yeah.
I really hear the same thing. I started really, like, asking my heart, like, just maybe a couple months ago. It's just and it's just such a quick and clear answer, and
Cool.
And sometimes the answer would be you're asking the wrong question. And I started realizing that the answer, I was looking for a yes or no, and because I was looking for a yes or no, I would often see a yes or no, but actually the answer was simpler than that. I mean, I can't really put it into words, but if I had to, the answer would always be just keep living. You know, and any time that I like kind of got in my head and thought that there was a decision that needed to be made, or that this is really important what direction I take right now, so I'm going to really have to think about this and be very considered about it, blah blah blah, you know, getting into the thought spirals of just trying to rationalize and understand things. And then I would tune into that hard space and it would just be like, yeah, just keep living. And then I would just kind of go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Actually, no decision needs to be made.
Yeah.
Stuff's just going to unfold and it's just going to happen.
Yeah.
And what is it? The way of the open path, I think is, I just heard that the other day and it spoke to something that I already knew, but said it just so succinctly and beautifully, which is just, no decision really needs to be made. It's just a matter of just keeping on walking and just walking where those doors are open.
The mind just loves problems to solve, and
it
does. Makes up so many for us.
It does, and this is something that's really fascinating me at the moment. And it's not a popular popular way of seeing the world, because I feel like there is a lot of attachment to problems. In a sense, I think problems can be quite a enjoyable piece of life. Perhaps like, you know, quite indulgent to really sink into our problems and to own them. But I'm just noticing, that like problems exist only as much as we want them to, really. And so, you know, like when I was studying design, one of the first places we'd start would be with a problem statement. And I thought that was really interesting, start coming from a place of, okay, what's the problem? I'm going to solve it. And I think, I don't know if that kookaburra out there has a concept of problems.
Problems that it needs to solve.
I'm not quite sure, but just the way that it's sitting so calmly and its body tells me that it's just living in this moment, and it doesn't really need to, I think, like conjure up problems to make solutions to, which isn't inherently a good or a bad thing. And I think that's kind of what this circles around to at its core, is that a problem, saying something's a problem, insinuates that it's bad, and so it kind of creates a world of badness. As opposed, well, I mean, and I don't think that we need to present a world of good either, because, you know, everything in balance. I mean, maybe that's why it's kind of a nice emotion, is because the more that we think about our problems, like, so much good stuff has to happen to like bring it into balance.
Yeah, nice. It does have a purpose.
Yeah, so you can tell it's a bit of a rabbit hole, I think.
No, I love that. No, that's fantastic. This is what's come up for me in the same kind of space. My wife and I and friends for a long time have held a vision of some land that we own, is kind of more what it's tended to look like, but you know, and raising our children in a close kind of village, maybe homeschooling. It's a nebulous kind of idea, but it's kind of, and recently, and it's through Jimmy and the Polka Dot, and he's very big on going, nobody needs to own the land, but there's people that do, and have huge farms out here and would welcome tiny villages, is kind of his picture on there, to help and have that connection and that community at, you know, across generations and even cultures and stuff a little bit there. And
Jimmy.
yeah, no, I just went into that this is all Indigenous land as well. Which is a whole other very deep and rabbit hole. But I won't go there right now. I will say we went to this place and met the people there, and it was just stunning. And suddenly this idea that we could go and live on land there and do this thing was right there. And there's always been barriers, and I have always thought my work is working towards creating this particular life, but it suddenly struck me that wasn't true at all in the way that I thought it was. Like, I'm enjoying working towards this thing, which is a completely different thing to going, this is actually where I want to be. Like, I'm really in the like this narrative that I'm working on this to do this. It's really, really confronting, and I haven't kind of integrated and found my own answer around that. But it was an incredible realization to just go, this goal that I have gives me a problem. Like, it gives me a lot of problems. I need to raise a lot of money and all kinds of things to face. And I'm really, my life, a major part of it has been working like towards this goal, but not really.
Wow, that's crazy, isn't it? When you're faced with the satisfaction of the goal, how much do you want it? I mean, how has that changed how you perceive that goal now?
Oh, look, I haven't found where I put any of this yet, to be honest.
Processing.
But it's kind of, that was probably a couple of weeks ago. But it's like, it brings me right back to, what are we doing here on this embodied and existing? Like, what is the meaning of any of this, right? Which used to trouble me a lot as a teen. And then when life is busy, you've got kids and you've got many things going on, there's not time to kind of think about that. I'm busy working towards this goal that we're going to have and raise the kids, and then if that's removed, then suddenly it's like, oh. And the realization I had just the other night too, when I stopped and started writing, and that was like, my body was like, do this, and straight away there were these answers there, but also realizing my own fears around, like, I'm going to say homeschooling, but I mean a larger kind of thing of really kind of what I mean is setting my own example and path and childhood from my children, going like, this is, because I have this idea that's really beautiful, but it's a little bit off the beaten path, and realizing that I'm terrified that I don't know better than this Western society prescribed kind of path. And like, as long as I'm, doing a job and earning, and we're going to school, it's an alternative school, it's a good one, but it's still like that path. You can't be judged for getting it wrong as long as you're basically sticking to that, right? But if you're going to do it your own way, you're responsible. That's maybe a good way of putting it. It's sort of like, as long as we're doing it the way you're supposed to, you're not as responsible, actually. Anyway, I don't know. That's all very tangled for me at the moment.
That's fascinating. Maybe I'm seeing it in a bit more clarity because I'm getting to listen to you as opposed to like trying to let the thoughts come out. But once again comes up the concept of right and wrong. In taking responsibility over something, you're opening yourself to the potentiality of it going wrong, right? And that's terrifying. Like, no one wants the universe to be wrong, and I'd argue it's actually impossible for anything to be wrong. Through a very high level philosophical lens.
People on Twitter would disagree with you.
This is why I say it's an unpopular thing to talk about, is because you go, oh really? Nothing's wrong.
For sure. No, and look, I agree with you, but I'm terrified, and look, I think mostly of social damnation and judgment. Yeah.
From
in this, I don't know. Yeah, like society. I don't know. I kind of like. I mean, that ties in for me. I didn't accidentally mention Twitter. There's like this, the what's the word for the hatred of people with wrong ideas and doing the wrong thing, and like there's yeah, maybe that's largely personal, is just this fear of judgment. Even though like it's so obvious objectively that now we're all connected in a way we haven't been, and suddenly like, oh wow, we've got really different ideas about things. I mean, maybe not, but maybe under the surface they're not so different, but in the way that we talk about them and think about them, there's so like that should say so clearly there isn't a right and wrong, okay? And unless you do it in a religious kind of way and go, yeah, everyone is wrong except for my group. Sure. But objectively, that's obviously absurd. And if anything, that should be, give permission to follow your heart and do it your way.
Yeah. I think permission's a great word that's been coming up for me recently. And I think it's something that is really being cultivated right now, like amongst humans, at least in the circles that I'm going around. It's just like so much permission just to be your like authentic self, and that's something that like we're all interwoven and interconnected, and so if part of my body, i.e. you, doesn't want me to do something because it's wrong, then I'm going to feel that as though it were my own body, because we're part of the same, mess, basically. The very, complex system. And so for you to give me permission to be free, although I guess that word feels like it's lost a bit of meaning. But for you to give me permission to be myself, basically, is such a beautiful offering, because I think as like humans, and I mean I hear people say humans are social creatures a lot. I feel like it's one of those embedded phrases in my mind, but I do need that permission in a sense to make it really easy for me to be able to just be who I want to be. And that's something that I can really feel being cultivated. I don't spend time online, so I think that's something that I kind of don't get to absorb what is right and wrong through the lens of like a global perspective and what people are saying internationally, and so I think that helps. Oh,
absolutely. I mean, that's the ultimate for being stuck in your mind and ego is just kind of getting attached to some idea on the internet. And
it's amazing how those ideas will creep their way into our psyche and change how we approach situations.
Absolutely.
And just to ground it, once again, that's not right or wrong, and it's not good or bad. If we are being led by social pressures, or that's just it is what it is. That's how we are, that's how we're being, and that's okay.
Yeah, definitely. I'm reminded there of a friend who made the comment many years ago. I think about Facebook, but maybe about social media generally, that it's just this conversation that the world is having, and the value of that conversation that we're all talking, and and that's a good memory to have.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Because once that really looks like a problem, it's one of those things that we can point at and go, social media is a problem.
Yeah.
But there's something kind of beautiful in there. In that global conversation that's happening that really hasn't happened before in that capacity.
Not at all. Not even close. It's a really new thing in our time now.
Yeah. And so it's a jumble, and it's really complex, and it's super confusing. And because we can't wrap our heads around it and understand it simply, the mind just, I feel like, plays little tricks and doesn't really like it that much. But but yeah, maybe, you know, there's something happening there. Something happening.
On a personal level, it's very easy to get addicted and drawn in a way that doesn't feel at all healthy. And But so I think I want to wrap up soon. I do want to ask you what, if you recall, made you make that map and start on this journey that you are currently on.
I mean, it arose out of a problem statement. This is so when I was going to uni, we were facing all of these, what felt like to me, surface level problems around like products that we were designing, or situations and how do I say, challenges that were out there in the world. And it felt like my mind kept almost like filtering past all of the surface level kind of solution stuff, and really just, I couldn't help but just dive down into the purpose level like thinking. And it seemed that my mind was just kind of kept like pushing against this thing that was just needed to be spoken and needed to be heard by myself. And I could feel this like little body of knowledge within me that was just like, listen to me. And so I started this writing process, and I was waking up at 6 a.m. every morning and doing an hour and a half of creative process. And what ended up emerging was a writing process, essentially. And I just wrote pages and pages and pages and pages and pages of what was going through my head. And really came to a clear, like what felt like a clear and kind of constantly unfinished picture of what almost like, well, there were 3 chapters. So the first one is where we've come from, a history, I suppose. The second is where we are, the present situation, and then the third one is where we're going. And I wrote the first 2, and that was like so therapeutic to just like get that out of my head. And then when I got to the third one, I thought, where we're going, well, like, you know, the hubris I'd have to, you know, try and project where we're going into the future, it didn't feel right. So it felt like I had these little trinkets of, I just had tiny little trinkets of guidance from my intuition that were just saying, okay, you know, stuff like the commons, for example, just the commons as a concept fascinated me. It really put words to something that I thought was really important. Ownership was something that I was really fascinated with, in terms of almost like how unownership works. And how pervasive ownership had become within our system.
So how unownership works, do you mean like treating things as a commons?
Essentially, yes, but even like next level in that, like getting to the point where like the process of the land being owned at all is actually something that has been unlearned by the mind. And that's something that's a process that I'm going through. So
as in, so I just want to clarify that, because like it's kind of, when you think about us all here as organisms on this planet, or like there's something absurd and unnatural about ownership. And when you're saying unlearning, are you saying like that the concept of ownership gets so ingrained means forgetting something more fundamental about our actual connection to?
Yes, so I think it's a matter of ownership creates hierarchies in this, you know, mass of things that exists around us, when those hierarchies, I feel, just don't exist. And so like to say that I own that tree, for example, because it's on land that I own, is to put me in a position of power over that tree, to say that because I own it, I have control, and I can make decisions for that tree because I own it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's like creating all these little invisible hierarchies that are actually like super important. Like actually, well, not important in that. I guess they're important in that they like really affect the way that we interact with the world.
Human.
And there's lots of pieces, and I've analyzed these to the nth degree. The words that we use, like possessive pronouns, for example. I've experimented with removing possessive pronouns from my vocabulary because, you know, even something like my cup, implicit in that is ownership. By saying this is my cup, I'm creating a hierarchy between me and this cup. This cup is beneath me. And that.
Is that the kookaburra you were looking at on the cup? No, you were looking at
No, there's actually two now on that tree out there.
Where are they?
See, you have to lift your head up a little bit. Yeah, on that branch up just above the roof line there.
Oh, there. Yeah. Cool. Sorry. I didn't see them before. Anyway.
Yeah.
I want to just mention, have you read the book Sacred Economics?
No, I haven't.
It's really good.
I've been referred it.
Me too. I was referred it for years. I finally got my copy.
Nice.
And there's some absolute gems in there, but one of them is around ownership, and he says, you know, you take your title deed for anywhere, and then that was purchased from someone, and you go back long enough, someone stole it, right? And he says from the commons, right? That's a kind of English kind of thing. Like, nobody used to own the land. At some point, someone went and said, this is mine, I'm taking it from everyone else. Here in Australia, that's much more literal. We came over and colonized and took it from Indigenous people, but
that's wild.
And you can't argue it either. I think it's a really strong, simple point, you know.
And you know, I love returning to this, but like, you know, somebody coming and drawing a border around land and saying it's mine, as politically challenging as this might be, isn't objectively right or wrong or good or bad. It is what it is. It is what happened, and there's something in that for us now. Perhaps that's actually like a stage that, you know, we needed to go through to get to where we are now, to go where we're going. You know?
I agree. I mean, with appropriate caveats. But I think it's a good, like, you know, you talk about unlearning the notion of ownership. Like, if you think about it in that way, it's sort of like, oh yeah, no, this thing that I absolutely take for granted. And I was aware, kind of, with raising the children when they're young, and just like how much this is this child's, this, you know, like how much you teach these concepts that we have.
And like going to someone else's house, for example, it's like it's a different environment.
You can't go in that yard. You can't touch that car. Like,
isn't that crazy?
Oh yeah, and you just, and it's, you know, it can be done quite unconsciously, but it's done. You know, I absolutely did it. I was like, oh, I'm doing this.
We catch ourselves.
Yeah.
I
don't know.
And it's good. It's good to. I think, you know, just to be observant of that feels healthy. Just to be aware of it. So it feels like a process of unlearning, really. Unlearning patterns and habits that just feel so entrenched. And I think money is a whole another can of worms for me. Another thing that like really entrenches this sense of ownership and a hierarchy over things. And also, many other ways that it interacts with me and the people around me. But focusing on this piece around, unownership, I felt like I got this sense that there was a real like alignment between the way that I was thinking and the way that like a lot of other people were thinking, just that people hadn't really like articulated it in a way that made sense, because it almost can't be articulated, because what's being articulated is just, it's just the way that things are. And so once you start to try and speak to it and talk to it, like even the term unownership, it's a negation. It's just saying, if you say, you know, what is it to be a human? I mean, all I can really do is point to what it's not to be a human. And I don't, yeah, so removing those elements that have been kind of glued to what it is to be a human, like ownership, feels like a part of the process of me connecting with nature, because those are the barriers that are going to put me at odds with nature and separate me.
The Tao Te Ching kind of comes to mind of like the way that can be named is not the way. It's like you can't. And I also have just been exposed a little bit to I can't think of the guy's name at the moment, who makes the argument, it's done like a mathematical model on survival of the, like evolution through natural selection, as saying if we take that as a given, and it's a really good model, it explains a lot about our reality, but if we say that's true to some extent, then, and he's kind of modeled this out, I don't know exactly what that looks like, that side of it, but then the probability that we understand reality as it actually is zero. That would not be understanding what the truth of things are, is not conducive to surviving and creating, and so I like that ties into what you're saying in terms of like any time you talk about it, you're straight away in a world of construct and ideas, and that's a like the human layer, the mind's layer, which is on top of the experiential layer, which is already not the deeper truth of what is.
I really connect with that. The trying to understand our world and trying to put it into some sort of terms that the mind can like wrap itself around it. It's like it's just doing backflips on itself, because like, I mean, I feel like I can only really say that I understand what is within my being at this moment, and even like I can't put words to that, even though I understand it. And so, you know, to understand the universe is to be the whole universe, and in a sense, I think that's true.
So you said 3 parts to this, these writings.
Yes, where we've come from, where we are, and where we're going.
And so where does where we're going sit then? Because then we've gone into talking about not being able to capture in language and experiential and stuff like that. And that was an answer to my question of what started you on this journey. So tell me about part 3 then.
So part 3 was, so where are we going? So it felt, I had some little pieces of guidance that were coming up for me, you know, these words, these ideas that I felt passionately about, but that I couldn't write about in such length that I could the first 2 sections, because it was easy to write. I mean, easy, it was a challenging creative process, but there was knowledge there already around what the current situation was and what the past situation has been, particularly in relation to my life. Like I really tried to, rather than going sort of high level sort of society, I really tried to look at how these pieces affect my life, like money, for example. But then, looking into the future, I had a few guiding pieces, and one of them was this vision of the world as how do I say, like, if we follow this path of what does the world look like if it's unowned, or if ownership isn't a construct that we subscribe to anymore, then how free and how liberating it would be to be able to travel the world without borders, to be able to show up at people's houses and really feel welcome there. and not feel like you're asking permission constantly, but actually just knowing deeply that you just have full permission to be wherever you want to be, or wherever you need to be, wherever you're called to be, and to interact with spaces in the way that feels harmonious and the way that feels right. And just like, there's just this deep sense of trust in intuition that arises out of that for me, and that's a real guiding light for me. That's set me on this path of finding other people that that this clicks with, where I can, like, those pins on the map, as far as I'm concerned, are unowned places where I feel like I've shown up and I feel really welcome, and I feel like this land we can live in harmony with.
That's beautiful, and I absolutely resonate with that really powerfully. I many years ago I had a bit of a mental breakdown, and one of the things that came out of that for me was I just became aware of the places that were home for me, and I don't want to go into a whole bunch of story around that, but I had my crazy pants. I spent some time in a mental hospital a week, but on one side of my pants I wrote the homes that I have in the world, and they were homes of friends. One was a pub, but that being able to be in the world and go, I'm welcome, I'm okay here, I don't owe anything, I don't need to, I don't need to go and do a horrible job to have money so that I'm allowed, like, just, and there's such I yearn for that so much, I find that in various places, and I'm allowed to be me as well, like,
I'm welcome, I'm okay. That's so beautiful. If that's not the heart of what we're talking about, I don't know what is.
Nice. Oh, cool. I think I'm going to kind of wrap that up there.
That sounds great.
So cool talking to you. Really glad to have met you and have done this, and I'd really like to stay in contact too.
Please.
I did though. No. On these writings, do you envisage publishing them?
I did initially.
Yeah.
And then I realized it was just for my own processing.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Because I started spending time trying to change, like, the sentences and the paragraphs and stuff around so that it would be coherent to someone else reading it. Yeah. But then I realized, no, this is my processing. This is my journey.
Yeah. Cool.
Any moment that I spend trying to make it palatable for someone else is just besides the point.
Okay. Awesome. Cool. Well, I'm gonna stay connected to you, and
thank you. Please.
Yeah. Cool.
Can I give you a hug?
Yeah.
Nice.
So much.
Thanks,
Cool.
bro. Thank you.
Hey, that was awesome. Thanks for being on my podcast
too. I appreciate all your questions and curiosities. I feel like there's been some, like, good processing for me as well, just to really be able to speak it. Like, I felt there being a few moments where it was just like, oh cool, this is crystallizing. Oh cool, this is crystallizing. You know?
Yeah.
That was nice.
Yeah, I thought you sounded very wise and like you had things
nice.
very clear.
Nice.
Yeah. And good for me too. Super good for my processing too. So I'm going to publish the first episode today, and I'm kind of want to stay 2 weeks ahead. So in a couple of weeks, I'll put this out and I'll send you the link.
Cool. Yeah.
All right. That's it. Goodbye. Cool.
I was walking across the oval the other day when it was raining, and there was just like 100 ibis there, and I was just like, this is crazy. I feel like I've never really respected ibises coming from Sydney. It's like, we call them bin chickens.
Same in Brisbane.
They're
everywhere.
They're kind of gross.
Yeah.
Well, that's at least the idea. And then I saw that feather and I was thinking, that's actually kind of nice. The little black tip on it.
They're not an unattractive bird.
Yeah, totally. So what leads you to do the podcast? Like, what's the sort of MO behind it?
The what behind it?
MO, like, it stands for like some Latin word, like modus operandi.
Oh,
or something.
okay.
It's like Just what's the vibe?
Well, its origin is about marketing my business. I was like, all right, I need to produce video content when we started a mobile app development business.
Yeah, cool.
And last year I was spending a bit of time going, all right, how do I sort of grow things? I'd love to get like a single client that isn't from my direct network.
Yeah, okay.
And
yeah.
So
interesting.
yeah, it was suggested just to have some videos, and I spoke to a friend who's a videographer, and he suggested doing like a vlog. And then I suddenly found I was just super excited about that in its as its own thing.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I'm kind of because I was also doing a whole bunch of processing around like mission statement, vision statement, and because it's my business, it was also like, who am I? What am I about? And that kind of thing. And the thing that came out of that was, I'm so many things. I've got so many things. I'm a father of 5, starting up this. Well, no, I've got this company that supports us, and that's always a balancing act too. There's always multiple projects running. I've got passion stuff that I love to do, and then I've got to make sure the bills are being paid. And and I just went, yeah, that's what I am about and know more than anything else is kind of balance. Like not like, I mean, balance means a lot of things as well, but so that's kind of what it's about. But my intention, this is the 3rd interview I'm doing. My plan will be to release this in 2 weeks' time. I'm going to release the first one today.
Cool.
Yeah.
Exciting.
But that's probably enough information anyway.
That's awesome. So when you say balance, like, as in like bringing all those elements of your life into balance together.
Sorry, that's the other thing I was going to say. Yeah, like, so there's work-life balance, but yeah, finding the space for everything and living with a lot of things and that.
Yeah.
But I also, I mean, I have a passion for philosophy and for just the many different ways to live as well, I want that to be a part of it. So
totally.
My quick answer is like, it's a podcast about work-life balance, but it's going to be whatever is exciting and fun for me.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Well, yeah, because when you were saying like, that it was sort of related to software development, I'm like, how does this relate to software development? I guess the idea is it doesn't, because it's actually balancing that.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't even put it like that to myself. Yeah, totally. How interesting. Yeah, hey, that's a really good reflection. I appreciate that because you do like this, you work on a computer. It's completely different to which I love as well.
Totally, yeah.
Connection and human interaction. You need to not rely on gestures too much for a podcast.
Oh, really?
No. I was just like, I didn't finish my sentence.
Oh, right. True. Yeah.
Just did that again,
You're learning. I might not be so proficient.
No. Yeah, cool. So the reason, the thing that prompted me, and also, I had the idea for this back in October, and it's sort of, and I'd recorded the 2 interviews sort of sometime, and it's taken a while. Like, I'm excited that it's actually going to start now. But it was when I asked you what your process was for doing design, and your answer I loved. You said that you don't think about how you're going to do it, but what it's for.
Yeah.
Like, that's really good. How can I capture that in some way? And then I went, I'm going to ask you to do the podcast.
Nice. So, I'm a bit of a nerd for theory and approaches to things. Like, this is my baby.
Is that your like working notebook?
This is my working notebook, and it's just like this is just my life basically. It's just everything and anything that I need, drawings,
cool.
like designs and.
No, that's not the chicken house.
Yeah, it is.
It is? Yeah, cool.
Like, working through stuff like, rainbow gathering. I've got stuff like, purpose, process, protocols, like, for different places that I visited. So like interpreting like ways that things work, things that I hear that I appreciate. If you see a job, it's yours. This is my travel plan. So this book just gets like my whole life.
Yeah, awesome.
And this has been a process that's been developing like just over, I don't don't know, like maybe the last 3 or 4 years, I've been like consistently using these notebooks with the pen that slips down the spine. So satisfying. And I've got to have worked through like a couple hundred of them. Like I always have like a few blank ones ready to go on the bookshelf.
And you keep them all? You've got
Yeah,
a library
yeah,
of them?
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Cool.
I don't know what I'm gonna do with them, but sometimes I go, I need to draw up that I need to pull up that idea that I had like a year or two ago, and it is handy to like have them all.
Sure,
But it's
yeah.
also just a little bit of like a souvenir kind of thing of like all the thoughts and stuff.
For sure.
I feel
Diary.
like one day I'm gonna look back and just be like, oh, that's what I was thinking. That was when I still thought that this was the case. You know?
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it's so cool. That just as a process, I think having space to record is so important. And in fact, when I started using them, the first thing I did was like I started a Kickstarter campaign to like make them for all my friends, because it just blew my mind how much like writing stuff down and just like letting thoughts come out of your mind onto paper, just how useful that was for the creative process. It's insane, because otherwise it's just like the mind is just a whirlwind of ideas and concepts, and rarely can any structure be made from it that's like actually viable or useful. And so like designing this thing, like I can't design this thing without some like recorder essentially that's gonna go, hey, don't worry, your ideas are safe in here, you can forget it all.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
I need that really bad.
And do you do just kind of free form writing then often too? Just dump out everything that's
some there's a particular feeling I get where it's like there's a lot of thoughts that I find valuable that are like floating around in my head, and so I'll literally sit down and it's like a super overwhelming feeling, because it's like, how am I going to capture all these thoughts? But I just like remove all expectations of what the page is going to look like, and just kind of just start writing. And it usually just starts with a word. It'll be like expectation or something like that, and then it'll just kind of unfold from there, and it might be a paragraph here and a drawing here or something. And I find that super useful. I think it's something that clicks well with my mind, because I'm naturally quite a forgetful person, and I really enjoy that. Like I think that's an asset of my mind, is that
It composts.
it composts and think like it's a bit of a sieve in a sense. Like it's just things just kind of float through it, and I think like if I was trying to live a conventional lifestyle, that wouldn't be very useful. But because I'm constantly like changing and switching my environment, I find that it's just really easy to let go of the past, which is kind of useful for like constantly moving forward through life in just like an ever-changing mode.
Cool. No, I really like that. I really relate too. I'm very forgetful. But I think of memories and experience. Like I might not remember the specific thing, but the important parts are integrated.
Yes.
I think, so
well, that's what it is,
changed
integration.
And I couldn't agree more with the writing. I night before last, I just couldn't sleep. I was just up for the longest time, and then suddenly, and I haven't written in the longest time, but I just had this compulsion to get my diary out, and as soon as I did, I just like all this clarity and epiphanies, and it's just like, oh my god. And that was all just there, but it wasn't there until I started writing it, and then it just crystallized in just a few pages.
It's amazing what's on the surface if we start digging. And surprisingly, it can be like a difficult thing to start. Like I've been finding recently that there's things that I want to do that I notice my body like conjuring up resistance to, and so there's this weird like dilemma in the moment where it's like theoretically I want to do this thing because it's like aligned with what I'm doing, and I like it and I enjoy it, and I've had good experiences with it in the past. But now all of a sudden the moment's come to actually do it, and my body's going, just sit down and, I don't know, eat a bowl of muesli and, then maybe play some guitar, or, it's actually, it's usually something like really basic that my mind tries to convince me to do. You know, that's not the thing.
Yeah, and so I can certainly relate to that. And so, do you think it's not actually what you really want to do? You think that it is, but it's not, or what do you think's going on?
This is why I find it interesting, is because it's like in one sense, I like to follow the philosophy of really listening to that and going, okay, if that's what if that's not what I'm needing, or if that's not what I'm wanting, then that's not what I'm wanting. That's fine. I'm not going to push it. But if the thing that my mind is telling me to do is, let's use eat a bowl of muesli as an example, and I know I can feel I'm not hungry,
Yeah.
then it's kind of like that doesn't really stand up.
Yeah. I'm on to you. Yeah.
Totally.
So are you saying that, and then writing is a good process for figuring out what's going on then?
No, that was just something interesting.
Yeah.
I think writing is a good process for figuring out what's going on in any case.
Yeah. No, look, I certainly relate to that too. So often it's so fun. I was just saying, I've been wanting to do this for months, and I'm going to today. I'm excited to.
Yeah.
But it's a really tricky thing for me to pick that apart and go, am I avoiding this for, I don't know, I guess I've got some idea that some reasons are valid and good and some are not.
Well, I think it's harder to do something easy that you don't know how to do than to do something hard that you do know how to do.
That's very wise.
And so it's like, I find that usually the things that my body's conjuring resistance to is things that it doesn't know how to do, that perhaps are really straightforward, but it's like a creative process, and it's a little bit like, when they sit down at that desk, I don't know what's going to come out. There are a whole bunch of words that I just I don't know what they're going to be, and that's like way more intimidating than I don't know, sitting down and playing guitar, which is something that, like, I've done a million times before. I know I can sit down and play a song that I know. You know, that's not challenging. So yeah, it's interesting.
So I think we've started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's just.
Yeah.